Hello, welcome. Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Alexandra Schweigert, and I have the pleasure to serve as our Young Alumni and Student Engagement Coordinator with the CSU Alumni Association. I first just want to start off and say welcome. Feel free, if you are an alum, to put in the comments where you are logging in from, what year you graduated. If you're cooking alongside us tonight, that's always fun to know as well. In just a moment, I will turn it over to our guest presenters, but ahead of doing so, I want to give a huge thank you to our CSU Alumni Association members. Membership really does make events and programs like this possible. Everything we do at the Alumni Association is thanks to our members. So a huge thank you. And if you are interested in learning more about membership, in just a moment, I will also put a link to that in the comments as well. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions, share thoughts, all of the good stuff. But I know you all did not come here to hear me talk tonight. So I'm really excited to turn it over to our guest speakers, Nancy, Eliza, and Emily. They are going to walk us through a whole meal tonight, and I will turn it over to them. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi everyone, thanks Alexandra for the introduction. My name is Nancy Gannon. I'm the graduate teaching assistant for the Kendall Reagan Nutrition Center. I'm a second year master's student here at CSU in the Food Science and Human Nutrition Department. I'll be graduating in May, so this is one of my last classes, and I'm excited to be cooking with you guys tonight.
Hi, my name is Eliza Venetis. I'm a first year graduate student in the Food Science and Human Nutrition Department, and I am also very excited to be here and cook with you all.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm actually an undergraduate student. I'm in my last year, so I'm also graduating as well in May. And this is also probably my last cooking class. So.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get started here very shortly, but before I do, I just want to make sure everybody has washed their hands, and if you have long hair that you have it tied in a ponytail or like a bun like myself here. And the orders of the recipes for tonight, we have plenty of recipes to get through. So I hope that you guys have started on that to do before class in the participant packet that was sent to you. If not, try to stay at the same pace that we're going to be going through tonight because it's going to be fast paced. So we're going to start with the strawberry and basil microgreen mini tarts. And then we're going to go to the creamy carrot soup. And then we're going to do the pesto. And then we're going to do the pasta, and then we're going to end with our salad. We're going to be going back and forth between some of these recipes because they're kind of lengthy. But again, we're going to do everything together, and you should be able to stay on pace with us if you've completed the tasks to do beforehand. With that being said, let's get started. So like I said, the first recipe for tonight is going to be our dessert because it takes time to sit in the fridge before we can make it. So I'm going to start with chopping the strawberries. So we want to dice them into like small pieces. It doesn't matter how big, but not too big because it's going to be the filling for our dessert, so we don't want big chunks of the strawberries. And our recipe calls for about 3/4 cups of the diced strawberries, but I have plenty of strawberries here, and I love strawberries, so I might do a little bit more than what the recipe calls for. So feel free to add more strawberries if you want to have more strawberries, but also keep in mind that the final yield of the recipe will be more than the expected yield per 3/4 cups of strawberries. So I've already washed all of my fruits and vegetables. So if you haven't washed your fruits and vegetables, please make sure to do so before dicing or chopping any of them. plenty of strawberries to go through here. So what I like to do first is like chop them in half, and then chop it the one half into another half, and then cut it vertically. So I have little small quarters of the strawberry. This is the last strawberry I'm cutting. Okay. I have a little bit more here, but I'm just going to leave them on the side for now because I actually do have plenty. So the next thing I'm going to do is chop my basil. So I have the stem here attached to the actual basil. You can take the leaves off of the stems and just cut the leaves and use them in the recipe. But the whole basil, like with the stem and the leaf, is edible. So I'm just gonna cut the whole thing, and this maximizes the amount of nutrients that I'm getting out of the herb. I guess it's not a vegetable, it's an herb. So there's no, I guess, no harm in eating the stems. But if you don't like it for any reason, like texture, or you just don't like having the stems, you can always take them out and just do the leaves. So now that I have my basil and my strawberries cut and chopped, I'm gonna put them back into a bowl. And we are going to let them sit for 10 minutes so that the juice from the strawberries and the flavor of the basil kind of mix together before we put them in the fridge. But then I'm also gonna add 1/4 cup sugar, and then I'm just gonna give it a quick mix here just to make sure everything is nice and incorporated. It smells really good. The basil is very fragrant. And then I'm just gonna let it sit for 10 minutes. You don't have to put it in the fridge, room temperature is fine. And then I'm gonna move on to my next recipe here, which is the creamy carrot soup. So we've asked participants to already pre-cut or cut your carrots and already cook them or roast them in the oven for 30 to 40 minutes under 400 degrees. So I've already done that with my carrots. And I have them over here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start cutting the onion. So what I like to do is you have like 2 sides for the onion. This one would be like the root. This one would be the top. I usually cut the top off first thing. And then I always make sure that my hands or my knuckles are tucked in when I'm holding the item, whether vegetable or fruit, so I prevent cutting my own fingertips. Oops. And then I usually peel like the onion from like the outermost layer. So I do peel the skin, but also one of the layers, the one that's directly beneath the skin. It would be nice and easy to do it over the trash, just so you can get rid of all the, the scrapes, but I have this little bowl here that just works just fine. Sometimes it's a little hard to get that first layer, so you can always go deeper, I guess, like for the second layer. So it's easier to peel, but it would be a little bit of a waste of the onion. Just making sure I get all that peel out of my way so it doesn't get with my actual onion. Okay, cool. So what I like to do next is cut it in half. And then I set it on the flat side. And then what I do next is I go, I believe that's vertical. Is that correct?
Horizontal.
Okay, sweet. I go horizontally. I always get these two mixed up. Not all the way, just like maybe halfway. And then I go in like many layers. So I went into like 5 different cuts horizontally into the onion. And then I do the same thing, but vertically, I guess, or whatever this way is. And also like multiple times. So I went like 3 times. And then now I just chop it. And then that makes it easier for it to be like nice and small. There's many ways to like chop your onion, but this is one of my favorite ways to do it. And then obviously when you get to the very end of the onion, it becomes harder to cut it. So you can always just, you know, cut it any way and then go back and chop more for smaller size. And then the recipe for tonight calls for 1 big onion or 1 like whole onion. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing to the other half of my onion. And it doesn't have to be like very small if you don't want to, you know, be like really, you know, like chop it multiple times. You can cut it in any size you want because this is eventually gonna be put in a blender for the soup. So again, doing the same thing. And obviously, like the more cuts that you do, either vertically or horizontally, will result in like a smaller piece that you chop. And actually, before I finish chopping this up, I'm gonna get a pot and get it started on the stove. So I have this really nice big pot here for my soup, and I'm gonna add about 1 tablespoon of olive oil. I put 1.5, and I'm gonna have it on high heat, just so the oil heats a little bit faster, since I'm almost done here with chopping my onion. And you want the oil to be nice and warm by the time that you put the onion into the pot, so it doesn't absorb too much oil. You just want it to caramelize. So if you're following along with me and you've already roasted your carrots, please go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees. And this is going to be for our dessert, which we're going to be doing later today. But if not, and you're already roasting your carrots, then make sure after you finish roasting your carrots that you bring down the heat to 350 degrees. Okay, so I have some time here, so I'm going to start dicing my garlic. So there are many ways to dice your garlic. I'm going to show you 2 ways. My favorite way is I do that if I'm using a blade with a knife with a large blade, like this over here, and I make sure that the back of my hand or my fist can actually fit on the blade. If this is not the case for you, please don't do this. Method of basically dicing your garlic, I'm going to show you another way. But basically what I like to do is I place the thickest part of my blade on the garlic, and then using my fist or the palm of my hand, I just go down on it with a little bit of force, like so. So basically this causes the skin to come off automatically, so it's easier to peel. And then the other way is, so you have like the top of your garlic with like this little like hole or indent in it, versus like the back or the other end of your garlic that has like the lengthy piece coming out. So you just want to place the top of your garlic on the cutting board and just press a little bit on it, and that also causes the skin to come out nice and easy. So these are 2 different ways to peel your garlic. And then now for chopping, I just group them together, cut them in half. Some people like to take off the top of the garlic before dicing it, but it doesn't really matter for me, because at the end of the day, like, I don't feel it when I'm eating, whether I have that part attached to the garlic or not. Okay, and then my heat or my olive oil is nice and hot, so I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit to maybe a 6 or a 5 on my stove here. And then I'm going to go in with my onions. I'm going to give it a nice stir. My eyes are starting to burn. So since my olive oil was a little bit too hot when I went in with the onions, I'm not going to leave it in for too long without stirring it around, because otherwise it's going to get too brown too fast. So just keep your hand in there and just keep stirring it around. So the goal here is to get the onion softened, so it should take about 5 to 7 minutes. And while we do that, I'm going to return back to the tarts or the strawberry mixture that I made here for the dessert. And then on a different part of your stove, you want to get another pot or a saucepan. You want to turn your heat to like medium high. And then you just want to simmer your mixture for 15 minutes. So it will have some liquid in it, and again, that's just the water or the juice of the strawberries coming out since we let it sit for like 10 minutes. So you just want to simmer that for 15 minutes. I'm just using a spatula to get everything as much as possible out of the bowl, like the sugar and whatever liquid is in there too. So this step here will cook down the strawberries. It will make it a little bit softer and more like mushier, so it's more suitable to be a filling for the dessert. So while this is cooking, so just grabbing this so my stove doesn't get all sticky. Again, I'm just going to keep stirring the onions. about a couple more minutes. Smells really good. And if at any point you feel like the pace of the class is going too fast, you can always type in the chat. Let us know if you want us to slow down a little bit. So for the soup recipe here, feel free to use any spices that you like to add. Our recipe, which we haven't used any of the spices just yet in the past steps that I've been through, but we're going to be using cumin and rosemary. So for your own liking, based on your taste, if you want to use any other spices, feel free to use any spices because anything will definitely be a good addition to our recipe tonight. That includes like onion powder, garlic powder, ginger, anything that you really like to use. So for my strawberry mixture over here, it's coming to a boil, so I'm going to give it a stir. And then I might turn down the heat a little bit because mine here is like medium high. So I might just make it medium low so the liquid doesn't evaporate too fast. It smells really, really, really good. I don't know if you guys can smell it, but the basil with the strawberry, like it's a great combination for the nose. So. Perfect. So my onions here are trying to become a little bit soft, which is exactly what I'm looking for. Scan. So at this point, I'm going to go in with my garlic. Make sure not to drop any in the dessert filling. Nobody wants dessert with garlic. And then the garlic browns pretty fast, so it should take like a couple more minutes before we're able to move on to the next step of the recipe here. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add my spices. So like I said, we have cumin and rosemary. And I have them grouped together here in this little bowl. So the recipe specifically calls for ½ teaspoon of rosemary and ¼ teaspoon of the ground cumin. I'm going to go ahead and add them. And obviously, like I said, you can use any other spices, or you can even add more of those spices or less, depending on your taste. I'm going to give it a nice stir over here. Again, making sure my strawberries don't stick to the bottom of the saucepan. And as you'll see, as this mixture gets hotter and hotter, you'll see that there's more liquid coming out of the strawberries. And that's good. You want it to simmer. Okay, so my onion mixture here smells really, really good. And at this point, I'm going to move on to the next step, which is adding my vegetable broth in my water. So the recipe called for 3 cups of the vegetable broth and 1 cup of the water. You can use any type of broth that you like, or you can even use stock. You can use the vegetable one that we're using in our recipe, or you can use meat or chicken. Totally up to your preference. So this bowl here had all of the liquid that I just mentioned. Give it a nice stir. this point, we're going to be adding the carrots that we have cooked or roasted before the class, which is about 2 pounds of the carrots. And the 2 pounds of the carrots were cut in 1-inch thick slices of, basically half 1-inch thick slices. Yeah, I'm just going to give it a nice stir. And then I'm going to turn my heat to like medium-low, which is about a 6. So we want this mixture to come to a boil before we can turn the heat down and let it simmer. And I'm talking about the mixture of the carrots. Pertaining to my strawberries, it's looking pretty good. I'm just going to give it 5 more minutes or 4 more minutes before I take it off the heat to place it in the fridge. I might just turn the heat a little bit down. I have it at about a 5 now. And then while we're talking, I'm actually going to get the water for the pasta going. So I have just some water here in a pot. And then I'm going to start to heat it up. It would be nice to know how many people are cooking along with us tonight, like live. So if you could let us know in the chat, that would be awesome. So I am pretty much finished with those 2 recipes for now before we move on to the remaining steps for these 2 recipes. So I'm going to give it up to Eliza to take over from here for the pasta and the basil, and then we're just going to keep an eye out for the carrot soup. Once it boils, we just want to turn it down and then let it simmer, and then we're going to give it 3 more minutes for the strawberry mixture here to finish simmering before we put it in the fridge.
All right, so before we get started with the pesto, we are going to chop our asparagus. So get back your cutting board and knife and grab your asparagus. If you haven't washed it yet, make sure you do that now. Got about a head of asparagus here, and we're just going to chop it into roughly bite-sized pieces. So probably around 1 inch to 2 inches long, whatever you prefer, because it's going to be mixed in with your pasta. And so with the asparagus, you can eat the whole thing. The little part at the top here, we will keep. And so I'm just going to start roughly chopping that. If you want to cut off the ends, you're more than welcome to do so. They can be, the texture of those can be a little bit harder, so totally up to your personal preference as far as the texture.
And then really quickly, the carrot soup here started to boil, so I'm going to turn the heat down. I'm going to leave it about a 7. and then I'm gonna let it simmer. And then we have about another minute for the strawberry mixture before we take it off. So you can.
All right, so my water here is not yet boiling. I'm gonna add a lid so it boils a little faster. So while we're still waiting for that to boil for the asparagus, I'm gonna start with the pesto. So grab food processor or blender. We're gonna use a high-speed blender here. So let's plug that in. All right, so I got that here, and so I'm gonna add all of my ingredients for the pesto.
Okay, before you actually move forward, I'm gonna call you off one more time. I promise, final time. Okay, so it's time to take off the strawberry mixture off the heat, and I'm gonna move your water also over there. Maybe it boils faster. So it's nice and soft and like almost mushy, but not really, which is exactly the texture that we want. So at this point, you can just put it in a bowl and then place it in the fridge. You don't have to let it cool or anything. Just go ahead and place it in the fridge after you remove it from the heat. And it needs to sit for at least an hour, so we will not be able to finish this recipe with you today, but we'll give you instructions on how to move forward. So I'm going to put this in the fridge right now.
All right. So again, I got a high-speed blender here. Food processor works as well. And we're going to start by adding our basil, garlic, pine nuts, and cheese into the blender. All right, so I have my pine nuts going in, my cheese. Again, with the basil, I'm going to keep the stems on, totally up to you as far as personal preference, but we don't need to chop it because the blender is going to do that for us. And then as far as the garlic, I'm going to use the same technique here that Nancy used as far as getting the skin off. But again, we don't need to chop it just because the blender is going to do that. So I'm going to take the thick part of the knife over the clove using my palm, smashing it so that I can easily get the skin off of it. And then I'm using 3 cloves here. If you are a garlic lover like myself, feel free to measure with your heart. You can add some more if you would like. And all of this is just going into the blender or food processor. All right. So the other ingredients we're going to hold off adding for now. That would be the liquids. So I got, once again, we got the cheese, the pine nuts, the basil, and the garlic. I'm going to make sure my lid is on tight. And then I'm putting this on my blender. Maybe turn your volume down a little bit. It might be loud. And we're just going to pulse this for about a minute or so until everything is like finely in dust. So good. All right, so you can see a little bit in here. Everything is just in like tiny little pieces as if I chopped it. Not quite a pesto texture yet, so we're going to add our lemon juice and our olive oil. So I have a 1/4 cup of olive oil and a tablespoon of lemon juice going in. And then I'm going to add salt and pepper. You are more than welcome to add some other seasonings as well. You could add chili flakes if you want a little bite to it, onion powder, more garlic, totally up to you. I'm doing a 1/4 teaspoon of both salt and pepper. And then we are going back onto the blender to get that nice pesto texture. a little bit just to make sure everything is evenly incorporated. And then I'm going to put it back on. The nice thing about pesto is there's a lot of variations with it. So we're using pine nuts and basil today, but you could really do any herb, any sort of nut or seed. Almonds, walnuts, sunflower seeds are all really good options. You could do cilantro, and you can also add lots of veggies in here as well, like kale, spinach, arugula for some extra flavor and some extra nutrients. Also, we added cheese to this. If you are dairy-free or vegan, you could omit it. Try vegan cheese. You could also try nutritional yeast for sort of that cheesy umami flavor. All right, so I'm going back to get a nice smooth texture. That looks good. You can do it for a little longer if you want, just depending on what kind of texture you want. If you want it like really smooth, liquidy, if you prefer some more chunks in there, totally up to you. Mine's kind of in between. And now I'm noticing my water is boiling, so I'm going to add my asparagus to this boiling water. I'm also going to add a pinch or so of salt to my water for some extra flavor. And we're going to let that asparagus boil for about 3 minutes just to soften. And with this pasta dish, you could totally substitute the vegetables. So if asparagus isn't your thing, broccoli would be really good in this, mushrooms, zucchini, any sort of leafy green. So if you want to add more vegetables, you are more than welcome to do so. All right, and I'm just going to give that a little stir. And then again, we're looking at 3 minutes here, so about 6:10. And I'm going to pop that lid on again and turn it down to about a 6 on my stove here. And then while that's going, I'm going to scoop my pesto out and put it in a bowl for now. Be careful with the blades, they're sharp. And I'm just scooping my pesto out of the blender into a bowl to reserve for later, and then we'll end up mixing it in with the pasta and the asparagus. And we're using the pesto with pasta here, but it's also a great spread. I love to use it as a sandwich spread. You can use it as a salad dressing if you add a little more liquid, thin it down, or honestly on like any sort of entree dish, rice, chicken, anything. Pesto is really good. It's also a really healthy sauce. We got lots of healthy fats with the olive oil and the nuts in there, herbs, lemon juice, really everything in there is a great option for a healthy sauce. Right, so make sure I got all of that out of the blender in the bowl. Don't want to waste any. All right, if you haven't stirred your soup in a minute, give it a little stir. And then we're just going to let that asparagus sit for another minute or so. And then once the asparagus is done, we'll set that aside and put the pasta into the bowl, or into the pot. All right, still got another minute here. With the pasta, we are using bow tie pasta. Feel free to use any shape you would like. If you're gluten-free, you could sub a gluten-free pasta here. If you want a little extra boost of protein, you could use like a chickpea or lentil-based pasta. Anything will do here. Totally up to you. And then it looks like it's been about 3 minutes. Asparagus looks a little more green, so I'm going to use tongs. You could also use like a slated spoon. And we are going to take the asparagus out. See, it's starting to smell really good. And then we're just going to use the same water here for our pasta. It'll give it a little extra flavor, so no need to sub it out. And then once we get all this asparagus out, we're just going to set it aside for now until our pasta is done cooking. And if you have one blender or food processor, I would recommend giving it a little wash right now because we will be using it again for the soup. Got a few swimmers in here. All right, got all my asparagus out, so I'm just going to set that to the side for now. We're going to go in with 8 ounces of pasta, so that's about half of one of those bigger boxes or one smaller box. And we are going to let that cook, again, to your liking. So around like 10 to 12 minutes, just depending on if you like it a little softer or more al dente. So I'm going to let that sit there. And while that pasta is cooking, we are going to move on to our next recipe. I'm going to hand it over to Emily.
Let me grab my recipes real quickly. So in this bowl here, I have some pre-shredded carrots. And I also have my arugula and spring mix in this bowl. So I'm going to add that to the shredded carrot. And then I'm going to grab my cutting board and my knife again. And we are going to start by cutting our cucumber. I'm just going to chop the ends off of my cucumber. And then I'm just going to slice that. And you could do it, leave it just like this in the rounds, or you can cut it in half. And then just throw that in the bowl with your spring mix and your carrots. So I'm just going to chop the rest of this guy. That means our pasta is getting a little crazy right here.
Give your pasta a little stir if it's overflowing.
I personally really love cucumbers, so I love having them in salads, on sandwiches even. They're really refreshing, great for upcoming summer months. Just gonna throw the rest of these in my bowl. And next I'm going to chop my green onions for the salad as well. I'm gonna cut off this little hairy part. We don't wanna eat this roots. Not as yummy. So I just have one bunch of the green onions, and I'm going to cut up the whole thing into little pieces. And throw those in the bowl as well. If you don't like onions as much, you can use less of the onion, or just not put it in there at all. This salad's really great for adding extra veggies in there, so you can put tomatoes, any sort of vegetable that you have on hand. So next we're going to move on to our avocado green goddess dressing. So right here I have an avocado. So what I'm going to do is,
just real quick, an announcement. It's time to take off the soup. Take the soup off the heat. So just take it off. And yeah, on with the salad.
so for our dressing, we are going to be using our blender again. So make sure that you guys wash that. And then I'm going to grab my avocado. I'm going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to remove the pit, which is my favorite part. But you have to be very careful. I usually take my knife and then I just very gently smack it into the pit, twist, pull it out. Super easy, but it's also very slippery. So when you're taking it off your knife, just be careful to not cut yourself. And then we are going to get our blender that I have washed here. And then I'm going to just smush my avocado in there. Pretty simple. If you just squeeze it, the skin usually comes off pretty easily. And then I'm going to chop my cilantro. So, like all of our other herbs, I'm also going to be leaving the stems on these guys. Just going to roll it up in a bunch and chop it really finely. Not finely, sorry. Very, not, what's the opposite of fine?
Roughly.
Roughly, and then we're going to throw it in a blender. It doesn't need to be fine because the blender's going to do most of it for us. And then I have my olive oil here. Don't want to spill any. I'll throw that in the blender as well. I'm going to throw some lemon juice in there. Some apple cider vinegar. And some capers that I have that have been drained. And then I'm going to also put some salt and pepper in there as well. So I'm going to do half a teaspoon of salt. And the pepper. I'm missing chives.
Oh, we need to.
Oh, never mind. Okay. We're also gonna throw some chives in there. For these, I'm not gonna cut them up. They're already pretty small, so I'm just gonna throw them in the blender.
You can use all of them.
And I'm gonna put the lid on this guy. And then I'm gonna start pulsing it.
I think it's put wrong. Like it should be a different way. It should like give you blue and red lights if it's put correctly.
The lid. The arrows.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. Now I'm gonna pulse it. Maybe not.
So I think actually what
Is it plugged in?
is like I think you just need to like take it off. I think it's the wrong way.
Yeah, maybe. Picky blender.
It's definitely the wrong way.
No. Which side has an arrow on it? Do any have arrows anywhere?
There's an arrow right here.
That's exactly how it was, yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting. Having some blender difficulties.
Yeah, we always do because I never know which way it's supposed to go. Okay, we're just gonna try all the angles, I guess, but it shouldn't be that hard.
I think it's the first way.
But the light's not turning on.
Is it on? It wasn't on.
Nice. So now I'm gonna blend it. Then I'm gonna add some water to it so it becomes a thinner consistency so we can use it as our salad dressing. And I personally like my salad dressing a little bit thinner, but if you guys want a thicker salad dressing, you can put less water in there. Oh no. Why am I so bad at using blenders? What's wrong with it? I'm gonna take it off. It's still pretty chunky, so I'm gonna go back in and blend it again. I'm gonna add a little bit more water.
And real quick, before she blends again, your pasta should be ready to drain. So you can take it off the heat and then drain it over the sink.
So the dressing's looking pretty good to me. So again, just whatever consistency you really want. Mine is pretty watery, but there's still some chunks in there. So you get a lot of that good cilantro and chives. And we can add it to our salad. I'm gonna take the blade out. throw that in the sink. And I'm just gonna, you can't really see me. I'm gonna put my dressing on my salad. And I'm just gonna mix it up. And then we are done with our salad and dressing.
Do you want to use the rest of the dressing? Do you want to leave it on the side?
Yeah, I can, because you know that's right.
Are you? There's no dairy in it, right?
All right, and now that our pasta has drained, I'm just gonna put it back into the pan so I don't have to dirty another dish, but you are welcome to put it in a bowl as well. And we are just gonna mix everything together. So I'm gonna add in the asparagus and the pesto. Asparagus is going in. And then the pesto as well. I'm going to give this a stir, and then once it's mixed, we will add our cheese. So we're going to add mozzarella pearls and then some Parmesan as well. Again, if you're vegan or dairy free, you can omit the cheese. Try vegan cheese, nutritional use, totally up to you. And also at this point, if you have or want more basil in there, you are welcome to add that. I think that would be really good as well. If you want to bite some red chili flakes, just whatever you would like. So I got a 1/3 cup of mozzarella pearls, 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese, and I'm just going to add those in there. And I give it another stir. Garlic smells so good. All right, so once you give that a good stir, your pasta is done and ready to serve.
Cool. Okay, well, we're gonna move back to the soup recipe. Just gonna do a little bit of a cleanup here so we have more space. Okay. So far we have made our pasta and we have our salad. So I'm just gonna put this on the side here. Okay. So now we're gonna be picking back up in the soup recipe, and we're gonna be starting at, if you're following the recipe packet that was sent, then we're gonna pick this up from step 9. So I'm gonna use the blender again. Just giving it a quick rinse. Quickly just dry the inside. Okay, definitely don't put it on the stove like I did. Okay, and then now let's get going after everything is nice and clean. So I'm going to be transferring the mixture for the soup into the blender. It's going to be a little bit challenging here, but let me actually put the blade in first. So I'm going to actually just do it with a ladle. That's easier this way. And then for the remaining liquid and carrots, I'm just going to dump it straight into the blender. Okay, and then now let's just put the lid on. Okay, and then I'm just going to pulse for, or basically blend on medium for like 30 seconds and then go from there. The sides, so I'm going to use a spatula real quick to just scrape anything that's stuck to the side. Again, I'm going to blend on medium for another 20 seconds. Finally, I'm going to add my butter, about a tablespoon of butter, and then I'm also going to add some black pepper up to your taste. Then I'm going to add my lemon juice, and I'm smiling because I might have had a little too much. It's up to my taste, but it might not be up to the other people who's going to be eating this. But we'll see. Okay, let's get it back to blending for like 5 seconds just to get it mixed up. So our soup is done. I'm just going to serve it up. But before I do, I just want to show you real quick how to continue with the dessert recipe, because that's all. Can you help me with this? Because that's all that we have left. Okay, so here we have the faux shells that phyllo shells. I never know how to say this. That's basically going to be used to fill, or that we're going to be filling with the strawberry mixture. So I'm going to get a baking sheet. And then you can either add some wax paper to it or spray it with some cooking oil. I'm just going to spray it. The whole point here is just not to have the shells stick to the bottom. And we're going to take them out of the container. So don't do this with me right now because you're supposed to leave the mixture in the fridge for at least an hour for it to basically become a little bit more solid than it is. So I'm just showing you this so you can do it at 7 p.m. because it went in the fridge at 6 p.m. So we're just taking them out, and then we're going to be placing them in the oven for about 3 minutes. We just want the shells to be a little bit crispy and nice. But first, we gotta fill them up with the mixture. So I'm gonna take my mixture out, but don't take yours out yet unless you want to. We have about 20 more minutes, or it should rest in the fridge for 20 more minutes. So with a tablespoon, what you want to do is just scoop out that strawberry mixture, and not too much of it, otherwise the shells will just fall apart in the oven, or just basically break from the bottom from the overflowing of the strawberry juice that will come out in the oven. So just a tiny bit, maybe I would say halfway. And then you just want to do this with all the shells that you have. Just fill them up with a mixture. And then if you run out of the shells and you have leftover mixture, you can always just, like, I personally would just scoop it out and just eat it straight out of the plate, but it's totally up to you what you want to do with it. You can save it in the freezer and then, you know, get more shells and then thaw it out before you put it or fill the new shells with it. Okay. So this is like an example of how much I put in there. And then now I'm just going to put it in the oven for 3 minutes. And again, I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees, so it's ready to go. Okay, now I'm just going to serve my soup. Okay. Here we go. It's not really a soup. And then we're just gonna serve our pasta. Do you want to serve the pasta? Yeah. Okay, cool. Maybe I would blend it for a little bit more, but for the sake of the time of the class today, I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. I mean, it's just, it depends on like the consistency that you like for your soup. Like I would eat this, so it's basically up to you how runny you want.
All right, and then we are serving up our pasta as well. Cheese melted a little bit while it was sitting. Can really smell the garlic. It smells so good. right, so you can see our pasta here looks delicious.
Okay.
And then we're going to serve up our salad as well.
Okay, let's get a bowl of salad. Oh, it's actually good the way
Yeah,
I
I was
just
gonna say,
placed it.
Oops, we spilled.
Okay. Let's just put it over there.
So salad.
Cool. So we're basically done. I'm just waiting on the mini tarts, and I'm laughing because I'm having so much fun with the group of people here tonight in the kitchen. It's awesome vibes. So I hope you guys are enjoying as well, cooking along with us and enjoying the same vibes that we are. So I'm going to take out the tarts from the oven. And I'm going to serve a couple for you to see what it looks like. All right, so we have everything served up here. I'm just gonna give you a closer look. So over here we have the soup, the salad,
The pasta and the tarts.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in tonight. I hope that you like the recipes and that you've enjoyed cooking along with us.
Yes, thank you all. I hope you had as much fun as we did.
I'm muted. Awesome. I know that if I was just so thrilled with the food, I couldn't help myself. It looked beautiful. I know that if we were in person, we would be giving each of you another round of applause. And I just want to say one more thank you to all of our CSU Alumni Association members and those who logged on tonight. It is the absolute best type of class because we get to log off and eat. So I hope you all enjoy your dinner. It looks delicious and have a great night. Go Rams.
Thank you.